when you're coming to get expensive high-end juice, and that's,
Hmm.
I say it with love. It is an
Hmm.
expensive product. It's organic. People are hand pressing it. I mean, it is the Louis Vuitton of juice. It's
That's right.
beautiful, but it comes with a cost.
Okay, welcome back to Exploring Growth. Today, I'm excited to be interviewing Amanda Stone, who's the CEO of Grounding Roots, located in Winter Park, Florida. Welcome to the podcast, Amanda.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah, so when I was looking for CEOs to interview for this series around Central Florida, I was looking for a company that required a lot of thought around branding. And when I came across Grounding Roots, I thought this could be a really interesting conversation. So I'm excited to have you on today. I want to learn a little bit about your company and talk about how you approach growth, but also specifically with your brand. So I thought, a good place to start would just telling our audience about what is Grounding Roots. Again, we're talking to a local audience mostly here in Central Florida. So a lot of people go to Winter Park. A lot of people are in that area and may or may not have seen it. So let's start there. What is Grounding Roots?
So Grounding Roots started 10 years ago. We just hit our 10-year anniversary in February. So that was a big milestone for us. But 10 years ago, we've evolved so much in 10 years. But we started as just a local juice shop in College Park. Over 5 years ago, we opened up and we moved to Winter Park, and we kept one location. We dabbled in one, and the ultimate ethos comes from, I was super sick. My husband, I was a traveling executive all over the country, and I came back from California. I said, everybody's healthy. Everybody's doing, juicing. Everybody's doing this. And
Mm-hmm.
so he just started juicing for me. He ran to Bed Bath and Beyond when Bed Bath and Beyond had the 20% coupons, and he started,
Yeah.
juicing. Then women just started showing up at our house going, hey, here's a orange juice bottle, fill it up for me. And I mean, we
Yeah.
even had the Department of Ag showing up at our door going, we hear you're running a juice business out of your thing. And we're like, we're
Oh
just
gosh.
friends. Like, it wasn't even real yet. And then I thought, wait,
Yeah.
if the Department of Ag is coming to us, I think we got something here. And
Mm-hmm.
ironically, the name Grounding Roots came to us prior to this concept. I just bought the domain name. I didn't even know what it meant. I knew nothing. And when I came back and we started concepting on this idea, we had the original idea was a foot massage studio with a juice bar side by side, and it was very California, LA inspired. And
Yeah.
after some reflection, my business mentor, now business partner, if you can follow that, said, go with the foot massage. And we were like, no, we're going to go with the juice. so so really, it started out as my husband wanting to get me healthy. We didn't know what was going on with me. I had been sick for years, been diagnosed with multiple autoimmune disorders, and he just wanted to heal me. We watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. So every juicer has watched that
Mm.
movie as like
Yeah.
the awakening of like healing's on your way.
Yeah.
Through the process of opening the juice bar, getting it approved by the Department of Ag, going through the city. I mean, it's hard work. But on top of that, coming up with the recipes, getting the branding done. Through all of that, not only is that happening, we're getting diagnosis of finding out I have Lyme disease. My daughter has Lyme disease in
Mm.
utero. So now it's becoming not just
Mm.
I got to get my wife healthy. I got to get my family healthy. Like, we've got to get healthy. So it became even more serious, jumping on to say, okay, this is a life-changing diagnosis. You will carry this forever. How do we support you? And at first, my husband wanted to heal me, and he is a natural intuitive. He knows, he's a healer. He's a massage therapist, a regenerative health coach. Like, that's in his
Mm-hmm.
ethos. But he wanted just to cure me. And, now that we have knowledge of Lyme disease, 10 years later, we understand it's a lifelong thing until we find something. And my doctor says, you are the healthiest sick person I know. And I love that, because I don't identify as a sick person anymore. And I'm here and I'm running the business now. But back then,
Yeah.
he was running it. We were a small mom and pop. I was working my executive job. He was running the juice shop. And that was a very different life than where we are today.
Wow. Yeah. What a story. And to pull out one point, I didn't know that you could get Lyme disease in utero. How
Yeah.
crazy is that?
So it's all blood transfusion. So again, it's transferring
Oh,
through the
wow.
years. Yeah. We hope
Wow. That must
someday
have been
that gets
devastating to
stopped.
get that news.
There's a lot of guilt. You carry a child into the world and you say, oh, by the way, I
Sure.
get to do this too. But, I
Oh,
also have
wow.
to find it as a blessing. And whatever our journey
Mhm.
together on this course is, then we have to walk that journey together.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and thanks for all that. That's
Absolutely.
it really shows that you guys have you. If you didn't have it originally, maybe you did. It just was brought out of your DNA
Yeah.
to do this thing and take the this good news and good product to the market.
Yeah.
Who is your target audience? Who are the people that most either right away identify with the product and its benefit, or maybe could be influenced?
It's so interesting because if you asked me 10 years ago, who was my target market, it would be like women between 35 and
Mhm.
50. And it was like this finite physical working out mom. And it has
Mhm.
evolved into so much more. I mean, we have post cancer treatments, we have organ transplant patients, we have everyday people that are, work at the school locally at Trinity Prep that come here. And it's really
Mhm.
anyone, any age. And this is what the company has taught me is my target market is anyone who wants to stay healthy, get healthy, or find an
Mhm.
awakening through natural foods. And it's shocking. I mean, the demographics of men in their late 60s to 18-year-olds that are in college and they're choosing to spend
Mhm.
it with me rather than Starbucks. And it's like, whoa, okay. So
Yeah.
I have been schooled on my target market completely, and I was wrong.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So, and I would agree completely. These days, maybe previous days, it would have been more niche down. But getting young college age students to not spend on Starbucks or even high school and spend it on juice, that's quite the the accomplishment. I mean,
I'm
that's
very
really them
humbled.
choosing that.
Yeah, and I just listened to a seminar. We were at Expo West launching another product line, and there was a talk, and it was talking about and I'm forgetting, is the latest one Gen X, or I mean Gen Z or millennials? Gen Z, right? The
I think
youngest.
there's even a newer. It's Gen Z, but there's a newer, and I think it's Alpha.
So Gen Z is the newest buying power. So really they're telling all marketers to focus on the Gen Z market because it's
Mhm.
uh my daughter and my son are in it, and they're 11 and 14, but all the way up to 22. And
Mhm.
that buying power of that 22-year-old is the control. I mean, you even see it in the Sephora craziness of teenagers, preteens
Mhm.
wanting all this skincare. So they have truly targeted this market. And I was just thinking, oh my God, that feels awful. But they truly
Yeah.
have the buying power. And the magic of this buying power that I wasn't aware is they read labels. That's my market.
Yes.
People who
Okay.
read labels, that's my market. So it's just a really interesting spin on this new market that's coming that I wasn't even aware of at this age.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I think a lot of the younger kids are more informed than generations have ever been. They have access to all the information, so it's there, and they want to read it and consume it and make it part of their lifestyle. Then they're going to buy in. But I'm curious, so you go from maybe a smaller demographic to a very wide demographic that can cause its own challenge then for your business, because well, now how do we reach everyone? We could be, it's for everyone, but so do you focus on one or two demographics and let the rest, cards fall where they may, or how do you go about approaching a target demographic?
When we do say a social media targeting, right? So it's like, oh, let's post an ad. Where are we going towards? It depends. I mean, ultimately, if we're trying to grow just our followership, then we will go national because we want to, our
Mm-hmm.
growth projections and trajectory is to be more of a national brand, but that's 5 to 10 years down the road. But you still have to have that
Mm-hmm.
trajectory. When we're trying to do an
Mm-hmm.
ad or trying to get people into our retail shop, I will traditionally go from a 25 to 55-year-old woman, potentially, is where I start with. And then health, organic, healthy lifestyle. Any yogi is my client. That is like if I had to pick one targeted market, I would be at every yoga studio possible because
Yeah.
people who
Okay.
do yoga, not a woman or a man, anybody, any human being
Yeah.
that identifies as a yogi, um, is a perfect target market because they take care of the body. They're committing to doing this practice. They understand, what it is to take in something. So
Right.
any yogi is definitely a called down target market, but ultimately it's anybody who loves the juice, understands its benefits, and really wants that continued lifestyle. The trend of juicing is gone. We rode that lifestyle. We
Mhm.
rode it out until it was totally fizzled out. And now what's residing is the residuals of people who truly do care at this point.
Right. I like that you have a focus and a target to start with, even though it is broad. And I think that I don't really know that market that well personally, but I would think that it applies that if you can pick a good target that is, good to purchase your product and be a follower, but then also has influence around them. I think that can be a good target that you pick, because I think people look to people on, especially social media, who are, in doing yoga or doing some kind of lifestyle exercise, fitness type of regimen, to, okay, well, they've got it together, then, maybe I'll just follow what they're doing. So it's probably a good follow.
Yeah, it's a good market to start with.
So let's talk about the early days of starting the business and bringing your product to market. What are some of the challenges that you had specifically with bringing your product to market? I know you had at least a few.
Everything. One, we would never. I had run my own business as a consultant and done different things, so I've had that entrepreneur background. I was raised by an entrepreneur, so I knew
Mhm.
that. I knew the challenges that were to come. But what I didn't expect is the physical work. I mean, my husband, it was I. And
Mhm.
again, depending on who I'm talking to and who's listening right now, the got to make the donuts kind of commercial from Dunkin' Donuts back in the 80s is like that was our life. So my husband would get
Yes.
up, he would go help me with the kids. He would leave at 6 a.m., come back, maybe help ride our bike to get them off to school, come back. So we had that flexibility, but he was at the juice shop from 10 to 6, come home, we'd
Hmm.
have family dinner, and then he would be back on the grind up until 1 a.m. preparing for tomorrow's next juice run. And so it was
Wow.
a grind. And so I'm home, not feeling great, still working a corporate job. He's working like the full on grind. And it was like, whoa, this
Hmm.
is hard. And slowly, like bringing in new employees so he could take a break. The first week we
Hmm.
opened, his uncle passed away and we had to leave, but we wanted to keep the juice shop open. And a friend ran it and it just reminded us, like, things will work out. You just have to
Yeah.
put your ducks in a row, get it all lined up, but you have to have some faith in running a business. Your faith is
Yes.
challenged 24/7.
Yes. Yes. I agree 100% with that. Did you start with the yeah, I know you talked about starting out of your house, kind of quasi,
Yeah.
but then did you start your first location? Is that kind of where you launched, or did you launch out of your house?
No, no, no. Like legally, you can't launch out of your house. We were literally only juicing for friends, and that was what was so funny is it was just friends of friends, like hearing, and we are
Yeah.
just making it for them. They bring us the produce and we just press it. But then we launched February 1st out of our College Park location. So that was really fun to launch out of that. That was our community at the time. That was,
Yeah.
people knew what was going on. They knew my story. So it was just a beautiful connection. And, launching in your neighborhood is always something really special, but you also have to be prepared to grow. And College Park can be very limited because people in College Park don't leave the bubble and people outside the bubble don't normally always come into the bubble of College Park. So we really wanted to expand
Right.
our reach and our growth, and that's why we chose to move.
Okay. So you moved to Winter Park, and then you had two locations for a period of time,
Just a
and now you're
brief,
just down to one.
just a brief moment, and then we
Okay.
decided to like put all of our energy here. When we had moved here, I was at my worst. I had got a virus. This is all
Mm.
pre-COVID. And I was stuck in bed for 3 months. I could barely walk to the washing machine.
Mm.
And so this was like I was doing most marketing and anything like admin, anything that needed paperwork or filing anything. I was doing that from my bed. And I had other people, I was
Oh
hiring some
wow.
social media people to help. And my husband was helping to run it. And so it was very, very difficult. We had different partners at the time. And
Hmm.
it got too much. We ended up selling the business um, during COVID, pre-COVID. We closed during COVID. 6 months later, the owners couldn't take it back. Our capital investors held the note. We were able to buy it back. And then my husband and I had to run it again and bring it back up to life. And so we've gone
Yeah.
through all of the challenges, and we sold just because I was so sick and he was so tired. But you look back over it and you're like, wow, everything happened the way it was supposed to. I was able to rest, I was able to find
Right.
healing,
Right.
and now I'm running the business. So like that was never part of the trajectory of where this business was going.
Yeah. And so that time when you sold it to the time where you bought it again, were you able to was that the period of time where you got healthy for yourself? And then
Yes and no. Like you don't have plans, right? So we packed up. We did a travel trailer build. We're like, okay, we need a break. I broke up. I gave it to actually a former customer had bought it, and it felt really good. But again,
Mhm.
you just have faith and trust that it's all going to work out. But COVID threw a whole monkey wrench into it, and life
Yeah.
happens. And so when it came back to us, they called and said, we're going to close the doors. And I said, per our agreement, you can't close the doors. And part of the contract is we have the ability to buy back if we want to. And
Yeah.
that's what we did. We're like, we've put so much into it, we would hate to see it go away. And that's how that worked out. Good lawyer
Yeah.
and a good foresight. And at this time I have started, and so I don't know, we won't even go into this whole other spectrum, but I started bee venom therapy. And so between the bee venom therapy, and I was missing our juice, like we were, not juicing. So we're trying to buy juice as we're traveling in North Carolina. And it
Yeah.
was, I'm feeling this healing, I'm feeling this revival. And we came back and it was my husband and I running it. And we finally got to a point where one of us needed to go get a job. One of us needed to stay at the shop, and he chose to go get the
Mhm.
job. And I chose to stay here. And it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Yeah, that seems like a key milestone for you guys. I mean, that's a lot to go through, but then to have those markers to look back and see, okay, it's not that you were necessarily starting over because you had a lot of growth up to that point, but kind of starting back over because you're repurchasing the company, and then it's now a springboard into what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And the one thing that the owner at the 6 month owner did for us is, one, he started delivering to College Park, which was our original location. So he started a delivery for us, and he started smoothies. We never did smoothies, so this was like,
Oh
wait,
wow.
we got new products. And so coming in going, we've never made smoothies, so we had to get schooled as well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really interesting. So you came back into new products that have been launched, and they weren't just sitting on their hands. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that I was thankful for.
So how did the brand change at all? Did the brand change from the time you sold it and when you bought it back?
The brand has always been the same. So we've always had this GR, a different font.
Okay.
And then this was very trendy at the time. It's just a very classic, it's a Langdon font. But my designer, it's Rick Ramat from PH3. He gave me two different fonts.
Mhm.
And I said, Rick, you're going to think I'm crazy, but can I combine those two? Because I love the logo and I like the font. Can we combine them? He goes, I don't see why not. And it's been that ever since. So it's 10 years going strong. And, I think fonts can always be revised, but a good logo can really last you for a lifetime.
That's right. That's right. So let's talk about brand then. How do you approach building your brand? I mean, how do you think about your brand and how what does it communicate to your buyers, and how do you approach using it as a growth tool?
Yeah. I think brand is a visual communication, right? So people
Hmm.
have to walk into a space and say, oh, or see a bottle and say, oh, that's Granny Roots. And so those have been
Hmm.
all the little things. So brand is anything and everything we touch, right? Whether it's experience,
Yes.
brand could also be our emotional experience, not just the logo behind me. So I
Yes.
take brand as this
Yes.
whole enveloping experience. And so one of the things from the get-go was black and white is our brand colors. Like you got to start with the basics.
Okay.
Like visually, what are we doing? We've sprinkled in yellow, we've sprinkled in lime green, we've sprinkled in, but ultimately
Yeah.
I am always in black and white. So it felt apropos to be black and white.
Yeah, I like it.
Some people have said, "Oh, your place looks like a flower shop because it's all black. Like the walls are black, everything's black." But it's really about
Yeah.
like the roots. Like you kind of like go back and like everything comes from the soil, so it's that deep richness. So really,
Yeah.
color is a functionality, and then it goes down to the brand is the experience. So our brand for us is based on medical, right? So we have this. Every juice is created for a reason with a purpose. Even if it's
Hmm.
my husband created a juice for our kids, we wanted to know what are the benefits of this juice. So part of our brand is the benefits. And so when
Hmm.
people come into our shop, it's not like, oh, what kind of juice do you want? Okay, place the order. It's like, hey, what brought you in here? It's that
Love
connection
it.
is part of our
Yeah.
brand. And so when they come in, it's like, what brought you here? What's going on? And
Hmm.
like, let's talk about this and let's sample the juices, because what people think they want and what their body's telling them they want is often very different, because they are like, oh, this sounds sweet, I want this, but their body's like, I want this. And so they're like, oh, I
Yes.
can't believe I like this. And so it's really about teaching the consumer to listen to their body, and as they're drinking it, their body's registering, going, yes, let's drink this. And like, I'm shocked that I love that. So that's part of the brand experience as well, is that they're feeling seen and heard. Because for 10
Hmm.
years, I was told I was a hypochondriac with, like my mother, as one doctor put it. And, like that was insulting to me. One, my mother was very conscious of her health. And two, like I was aware something was not right. And so when people come into our shop,
Right.
I never want them to feel that feeling that other people, other patients get when they know deep down
Hmm.
something's going on. I want every person to walk into our shop and be felt and heard. And sometimes we're not perfect. We've even just
Sure.
went through a transition on that, where my partner sat at the front of the shop one day and watched customers come in and out. He was watching our demographics. He was watching who was buying, what they were saying. And he realized we were so focused on operations on the back of the house that when people were coming
Mm.
in, it was almost that like rushing them to get out the door so we could get back to preparing for tomorrow's juice run. And we were just like, I couldn't place my finger what it was, but him just sitting there for probably about 3 hours, he could put the,
Yeah.
nail on the head and just say, this is what's missing. We broke
Yep.
up the front of the house and the back of the house. And I personally one day had to work the front of the house. One of our employees got sick. So I ran up, put my apron on, and I was like, how can I help you? And at that
Yeah.
moment, she's like, I'm talking to her. I'm doing the whole tasting. She's like, I've never been offered a tasting, and I've been a customer for 3 years. And I was like, so
Yeah.
even though your brand is this, you have to make sure your
Hmm.
brand is uh, owned and communicated through your staff. And when it's not, you as a leader have to stop and say, wait, I'm failing my team. I'm failing my customer. So it's a constant reflection as a CEO to say, what am I doing in terms of my leadership? How can I do better? And it's not so much as a failure, but as a moment of growth and then to fix it.
I love it. That's amazing. And thanks for all that, because I know that people listening right now are there's someone that's listening to this right now saying, yes, I need to do that. I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to business owners and CEOs and leaders that have done that exact same thing, where they just go and sit, if it's a physical thing, or they'll sit online, look at the analytics, and they just look at it objectively. They disconnect and they say, okay, what is it that the customer's experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
And they learn so much so quickly.
Yeah.
It's not even, I mean, you don't have to do it for very long before it becomes the patterns show themselves.
Yeah.
And I think what you're talking about, making this connection, I've always said the brand is sort of the culture worn on the outside,
Mm-hmm.
from a visual standpoint.
Might
If
steal
you're building, if you're building, yeah, sure, take it. If you're building a culture in a certain way, whether you know it or not, because everyone's building a culture, whether they're intentionally doing it or not, it's going to seep out externally into the visuals and into the experience, which is the big thing. And especially with people walking through the front door, but even online, with subscription services and those types of things, the experience is paramount today. People want to know that they can connect to the brand, and it's all about the experience they're going to have, both on the front end and then even on the back end getting service. So it's great that you're doing just those simple exercises to see what the buyer is seeing and experiencing, and then going and immediately changing it. I mean, I think that's wonderful.
It's not easy and it's painful when your
Right.
staff, anybody with employees, you say change, and change causes major grief
Yes.
at first. It doesn't matter how
Yes.
small, how big you are, change is never comfortable for anyone. But if you lean
Mhm.
into it, then it definitely can cause a beautiful exchange.
Yes. And I think that a lot of times employees will be dismayed if they are not connected to the why of why the change is made.
Yes.
They'll determine their own conclusion as to why it's happening. So a lot of times a little bit of communication can go a long way.
Yeah.
But now that we're talking about brand and customer experience, I want to talk about customer feedback, or, you know, really, like, I think feedback, and that's really what you just described. That they sat there and looked at, you observed.
Mhm.
Um, Feedback in various ways can influence the way that a brand, changes and grows over time, or service is given, or down the
Yes.
line. So, how do you consider feedback from your customers? And how much does that influence how you change your approach to both serving and your product and your brand and everything?
It's an interesting statement, because we're always seeking like feedback, and it's like, keep doing what you're
Hmm.
doing. And I'm like, but that's not what I'm asking for. Like, what more
That's
do
not
you
what.
want?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, great, but I like constructive criticism so that I can say,
Hmm.
okay, let's make this better. One of the biggest things was, for a minute we started with glass. We were doing, I think, 32 ounces, and the juice was oxidizing. And people are like, why is the
Mm-hmm.
color of the juice changing? And like, we're having to educate ourselves, saying, wait, what's going on here? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so then we reduced to a 16-ounce plastic bottle, and it just felt so wasteful. We hated it. It just,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just wasn't aligning with us. So we went back to glass, and switching to glass has just been part of like that brand and the
Mm-hmm.
ethos. And don't get me wrong, like, we have another product line that's coming out, and it's an HPP. It has to be in plastic. And so that is a
Mm-hmm.
different consumer brand. But when you're coming to get expensive high end juice, and that's,
Mm-hmm.
I say it with love. It is an
Mm-hmm.
expensive product. It's organic. People are hand pressing it. I mean, it is the Louis Vuitton of juice. It's
That's right.
beautiful, but it comes with a cost. And so one of the things people say to me all the time is, their feedback is, the glass is what makes a difference. And I hear
Mm.
that, they're just like, I have other juice bars, I like them, but they're in plastic. The glass
Yeah.
is what makes a difference. And so, like, you take that feedback, not only criticism, but also, if you keep hearing the
Mm-hmm.
same thing over and over and over again, I would be an idiot to go put everything in plastic, because I didn't listen. So I'm also
That's
hearing
right.
what is the positive, and like, what do they like about it? Because that to me is the most
Mm-hmm.
important.
So, where do you look for feedback? I mean, obviously, you have people walking in every day. That's a great place to have questions and those type of things. Do you use social media channels, or email surveys, or at conferences, or I'm sure word of mouth? Like, where are the honey holes to find that good feedback?
The number one is our customers. So they will always tell
Mhm.
you the truth. They will always tell you what
Yeah.
they want. So we start locally. We start in our shop. We will
Yeah.
do, a text. We'll say, hey, this is going on. Let us know. We'll do some surveys on IG. We don't do as much email
Hmm.
surveys. I'm always wanting more feedback. We did
Hmm.
a survey. How's it going? What can we improve on? And we sent it to all of our subscribers. And I
Hmm.
put a stamp on it. It was a postcard, like old school postcard. You got to
That's
write with your
great.
hand. And I was like, I'm not going to get any, but I want that human touch back. And
Yes.
I couldn't believe the amount of postcards that got mailed back to us. I'm like, maybe they just needed a stamp on it. So every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
one got a stamp, and I got all these handwritten personal notes. And I'm like, that to me is gold. And again,
Yes.
no constructive criticism, because I was asking, like, what can we do better? How can we serve you? They're like, just keep doing it. And it's like, okay, message well received.
Right. Well, that's I love that approach. I think that's very clever to send that out. Of course, adding the stamp probably helped the friction point there. But I think approaching your audience, since it can be very broad,
Mhm.
with different mediums in different ways. And always asking the question that you want to have answered in different ways
Yes.
is the thing to do. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
A/B
Um,
testing is not always the easiest because then you're like, which one
no,
do I pick and who do I go to? And you just have to trust that
yeah,
the message is going to be received to who it's meant to be
yeah.
received by.
So let's talk about your actual product. Well, first, I had a question that popped up. You were talking about using glass, and I think I watched a video on Instagram where someone was bringing the bottles back in.
Yes.
Do they trade them out, or how's that work?
So we have a closed loop system. So one of our goals is to, for every dollar you spend in shop, you get a point, and every bottle you bring back, let's be clear, it's our bottle. So we've received other juice companies' bottles
Oh
and
yeah,
random products. I'm like,
yeah,
let's be really clear. So
yeah.
usually that doesn't happen, but when it does, it's quite funny. So you bring back a bottle, you get a point. And so that's really like a comeback kind of system, a loyalty reward system. And then we
Hmm.
wash it. And the Department of Ag is always on us going, you're double sanitizing your product, your bottles, right? And we're like, we're fine with that. So it'll go
Yeah.
through a wash, it'll go through a bleach bath, and then it'll go through a sanitation process. So we're just really ensuring if we're investing this much, people are investing that much in themselves. We want to make sure we're investing that same measure in our bottles and making sure. So we try to keep it a closed loop
Yeah.
system. Bottles sometimes go to bottle heaven. Either somebody didn't want to wash it out. A lot of it's either wine we're forming, a funky kombucha,
Yeah.
or it's got to go. So it just depends. Or the label is retired. So, but we do try to keep a closed loop system as much as we can on those bottles.
Speaking of kombucha, are any of your products carbonated?
Yeah. So we just launched a kombucha. We worked with a
Okay.
very dear friend of ours that has been making kombucha since before, I mean, really before we opened, but he launched maybe 3 years after us. And it's Living Vitality is the kombucha maker. So he has his own line, and then he's created for us and allowing us to do a line through his manufacturing as well. So that's been really exciting for us to launch. We know him, we trust him. His facility is perfection.
Hmm.
So to be able to launch into something that we are not personally manufacturing has been
Hmm.
a fun gift
I
to do
bet.
it with somebody you trust as well.
Yes. Yes. How did that go? I mean, because to me, when I look at your product line, it screams we need a kombucha.
Yes.
To me. So
Yeah.
I'm sure when you launched it, it had to have gone well.
We just launched it. It is like
Okay.
2 weeks old. And so many people are curious about it. And the funny thing is, we
Yeah.
sold different kombuchas through the years and they did not go off our shelf.
Okay.
And we just kept thinking, we kept
Hmm.
canceling. We didn't like, we tried different makers, we tried different things. It wasn't the makers. Um, Kombucha
Yeah.
sells best on tap, we've learned, but we didn't have the room for tap. And it's just an extra. You got to bring your growl, you get your growler, you got to do all these
Yeah.
different things. We wanted it in a bottle or a can. We had
Hmm.
bottles, we had cans. And then this last iteration, working with Daniel from Living Vitality, was we want to stick with the can. He's perfected it, and just putting a
Hmm.
label. And the second we slap our label on it, people now trust that kombucha because we trust it. And that has been
Yeah.
beautiful. I mean, some of my wholesalers are, coming to me that I buy from, and they're like, hey, I want to sell your kombucha in my fridge. So it's just been
Yeah.
really nice I didn't realize that there was such a demand for kombucha
Yeah.
until we put our label on it. And that's really fun.
Yeah. That's got to feel really gratifying, and that you've had the validation that your brand has that much weight.
Yes.
That shows you that you really have grown something.
Yes. I hope so. We're still getting there. We're still in our humble beginnings. So not there
Sure,
yet.
sure. So, we're talking about different products and those type of things. How do you approach, like, how do you think about adding a new flavor, or, I mean, and specifically about juices,
Yeah.
if you wanted to add a new flavor, like, what is that thought process like?
There's so many factors. So originally my husband, which he has now trained our juicer's been with us for 8 years. His name is Zach,
Hmm.
is really getting everybody on board. The partners get involved. We talk about it. We talk about a demand.
Hmm.
We talk about what produce is available. How often is it
Hmm.
seasonal? How hard is it going to, you have to chase the hemisphere when you're trying to create a consistent, when people say local produce, I always laugh because there's no way you can create a sustainable static flavor local. You just can't. So, for
Right.
example, like one thing I'd love to do is create a seasonal juice, but I have to work with the farmers and I have to pre-plan an entire year ahead of time. So I have 2 organic farmers now I'm working with to plan for 2025. So it's not easy. You've got to think about your produce
Yeah.
supply chain. So that's number one. We kind of have that in the back of our mind, but it's not the deciding factor. We start with why are we making it? And it's usually a
Hmm.
cause or a person dealing with an issue, is how most of our juices have been created, or all of them.
Right.
A desire, a need. And then we kind of say, okay, well, what are the benefits we're looking for? Vitamin C, immune support, antioxidant, uh, oxygenation to the blood, whatever it was. So, for example, our heartbeat juice, my husband wanted a pre and post workout juice. He wanted something to build his
Hmm.
blood strength. So, it has a lot of parsley, which is 200% more potent than spinach. Beets
Okay.
bring nitric oxide into the blood. So this is a blood juice. When you see the red, you think blood. It really, truly is a blood juice. And so it's pre and post
Hmm.
workout. So it's oxygenating the skin, the blood, the skin, getting everything alive. And so it had a purpose. We found ingredients that match the purpose. And then that's when that product can then go into beta test of tasting. And then you got to think like,
Yeah.
when people say, "Oh, I just choked down the juice," that is the antithesis. Like that is the opposite of what we want. We want every single customer
Right.
to enjoy the juice. Now, the get well shot's very spicy. It's whoa, kick your tush. The benefit is there, and they know it. But when you're really sipping on a juice, you want, the Dr. Emoto. Are you familiar with that? Where he put love and hate on a bot on water, and it was from the same source, completely sterile
Hmm.
environment, and then he
Mm.
froze them,
Yeah.
and then the structures were different based on the energy you put on it. And we believe that
Yeah.
when you're drinking your juice and you're like, I'm just choking it down, that is not what we want. We want you to
No.
completely love it. And so then we're going
Yes.
into flavor profile of like, okay, these beets are earthy. So how do we sweeten it? Let's put some pears in there. Okay, maybe an apple, but
Hmm.
not too much apple because we want that pear to sing. We want that to be the note that carries the sweetness. So you're trying to not
Hmm.
only enjoy it, but you're also trying to keep the benefits. And that's really the
Right.
process that we go through in creating a product. But then we go into let's make it, let's do the costs. So the cogs are a nightmare because then you're like, this is the most beautiful juice, but I am literally losing money by making it. And then you got to go
Yeah.
back to the
Yeah.
drawing
Yeah.
board and go, how can we rethink this? Um,
Yeah.
and then we have to go into operational SOPs and making sure the staff knows how to prep it, make it, it's
Hmm.
weighed out properly, the recipes are written out, and then get it bottled and get the label made. And then you got to get that onto the shelf and then you got to market the hell out of it.
Hmm.
So creating one
Yes.
product is be prepared for a nightmare because so much comes from one product concept. Just the can of worms opens up.
Well, I really like your process, and thanks for very detailed explaining that. I kind of think
You're
it makes a lot of sense. But if you were to zoom out of all of that
welcome.
and look at the beginning and the end, first of all, I really like that how you start is with sort of addressing an ailment, a newer ailment that you haven't addressed, and then creating around that problem. And what that says to me is that you're really going back to your no pun intended roots,
Mhm.
and you're saying, okay, well, why did we get into this? Well, we wanted to solve a problem that we were having that probably other people are having.
Yeah.
So what's the next problem that we want to look to solve? And then you run it through this very fine-tuned process of taking it to market. And what's so great about that is that when you get to the end and you have to actually market it, I'm sure that at the beginning you've already, like we talked about, listened to your customers and you recognize that it's not just you that's having this need, but there's other people. So there's already a built-in sort of maybe small market to launch it to.
Mhm.
But the story at the end can be so compelling because of where you started.
Yeah.
So when you get to the end and you have to market it, you can speak directly to those core group that are going to want it, and then beyond, to talk about this identified need and all that this is doing to not necessarily cure it, but bring it around.
Yeah.
And I like the last part of it, making it taste good, because really that's how you get your core audience. They'll probably drink anything, but then you get beyond that, people want things that taste good. So I love that whole process because it really does start with how you started, and it keeps things really grounded. Again, no, I can't help but use
I
the
know.
words that you've chosen are so good. It keeps you grounded on what your mission's about. And then when you market it, should become pretty easy.
Mhm. I mean, we did a April Fool's yesterday on Dilly Delight, and we are going to bring pickle juice, which actually pickle juice is the rage right now, which is ironic. And people are like,
Yeah.
"That's so fun!
Yeah.
I can't wait to try it." I'm like, "No, no, no, it's a joke." And then I'm like, "Oh no, I think we started."
Your audience is just screaming, "We trust you. We trust you."
Dilly Delight pickle juice, yes, let's do it. We might be making pickle juice
That's funny.
next. I don't know. April Fool's
Okay, so
joke.
I have a couple more questions for
Yeah.
you before we get off here. Sorry, we're going a little bit longer, but I want to know. Okay, so that is amazing how you approach a new juice. But then when you look at your website, and I see that because I haven't been in your store yet, you have products. You even have some tours and services that you offer. You have subscriptions. How do you think about launching those types of things?
Um, Again, the demand, if it happens, or I wake up in the middle of the night and have
Okay.
this mad idea, and then my whole team goes, "Oh God,
Mm-hmm.
Amanda has another idea." Now we have to. My operations manager always jokes like, "You hand me all these boxes, and I'm the one that has to put the bow on it." And so
Mm-hmm.
we're always careful. Like, how many boxes do you have? How many can you handle? And which ones are on the shelf? And which ones are we going to open?
Yeah.
So I was a homeschooling mom on top of running a business, so I'm super passionate about kid education. And you know, the song, the kids are our future. It's true in my heart. Like, the kids are all that matter,
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ones that
Mm-hmm.
need the health. They're the ones that we're educating to be healthy, to take care of themselves. They're going to take care of us, I hope. And it's really, that's
Yes.
important for our humanity, to take care of our children. And so we do have classes, entrepreneur classes, that we teach to the kids, and it's just been a beautiful thing, from brownies to homeschooling groups to even my daughter's, now she's in private school, her private school class came and did a class. And so that's, I'm passionate about. But we can have anyone from, we've had the Mayflower living home, whatever you call, not assisted living,
It's just
retirement apartments.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
uh, Yeah.
and they came in for a tour and tasting, and we ended up having a subscriber out of that demographic. So again, I'm schooled every single day. And when he texted me, he goes,
Mm-hmm.
"You're going to be surprised, my A1C dropped by a point." And
That's
again,
awesome.
the irony is, like, juice is the nemesis of sugar, of how it is,
Uh-huh.
like, everyone just says juice, sugar. And it really is actually a benefit to supporting people with diabetes as well. So I'm
Yeah.
learning through my customers every single day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I
Oh,
would
answer your
expect too. I
question.
mean, people.
Sorry.
No, 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 no. It did. But I do have one more question for you. Well, maybe technically two, but
Okay.
one specifically. What's the one thing that you want to communicate to most of the people, so your prospective customers, who don't know about they don't know about your products? Like, now I know, because we've had this conversation. What's the one thing you would want them to hear?
I think the one thing that I want them to hear is that we create a product that is made for them. Regardless, out of our product line, something in our store, because somebody will come in
Mm-hmm.
with being unconscious, not thinking anything, and we'll say, "What brought you in here?" And they say, "Oh, I just saw it on Google, or I drove by." And then we say, "Oh, okay, everything going well? Is there any things that we want to address?" And they kind of look at us going, "This is maybe weird." And then they stop
Mm-hmm.
and say, "Wait, nobody's asked me that question before." And so I want
Mm-hmm.
people coming in to know that we see you, we hear you, and we want to support you. And that's really what our products do. We want to support the body and support the mind and support, the ability to have good access to clean products.
I love it. What are your plans for your future growth?
Right now, I want to focus on my local market. We just took
Okay.
three, five products, I should say, really, but I focused on one to the wholesale market in Anaheim at the expo, the Natural Products Expo, I should say. And it was shocking how many foods are not natural. And it's also
Mm.
one um, entrepreneur said to me, they own Randy's Pickles. They also have another jerky line, which is through Guinness. And he said to me, go back to local. Excuse my French. Can I curse on here? He says, fuck up locally.
Sure.
And I said, okay. And he says, because your local market knows you and believes in you. So take your wholesale market
Yeah.
locally. And so right now, my focus is in the next year is to really build out my local wholesale market, which is we're going through a whole step through the Department of Ag getting certified to go wholesale. And that's a step.
Okay.
And then I really would love to be able to have in the next 10 years, if not, sooner, is to have more of a wholesale market where more people can have access to our products in a
Hmm.
different way. I really want to disrupt how clean products are being distributed because they're very limited how you can get a product to shelf that's stable
Hmm.
and safe.
Yes, I would think that'd be a complex thing to problem to solve.
But the next real big step is a second location, and we're going to really go into the juice and coffee line. So it's going to be a juice and coffee bar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So can you say where that location is going to be?
If I knew, I would tell you. We're
Okay.
we're
Well,
looking.
hey, listen, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad it worked out for us to get together. And if I want to send people your way, where should we send them?
Send them to groundingroots.com, Instagram at grounding roots. We have the same TikTok at grounding roots. So everything is just a simple grounding roots. And anybody can Google us and you can find a map and get right to us.
Love it. Okay. Well, thanks a lot again. And I
Absolutely.
wish the best for your business.
Thank you. I appreciate it.